We want to try something a little different today to end the show. We want to involve you, the viewer, more. So we're going to launch an Ask Me Anything. We actually used to do this a bunch on Rising, but we fell out of practice of doing it. We're going to correct that now. We'll start with Marianne and I asking each other some political and also personal question, and then discussing. We want each of you to join in by asking your questions as well on the comments page. We do read the comments. We'll go through it once it posts on YouTube, and we'll pick up with your questions and our answers next week. So here we go, Marianne. I think we're supposed to ask each other some questions. I will start, unless you would like to. How did you come to hold your current politics? That's my question to you.
My background was in personal growth, spiritual growth. And starting back in the 1980s, I know you see that as dinosaur days.
Yeah.
I was
born in the 1980s.
I was working with primarily with people who had AIDS, the AIDS crisis. And because of that, because of being an AIDS activist, my entire career developed working very closely with people whose lives were in trouble. But what I noticed in the early 80s and mid-80s and even into the 90s was that most of the people in this country who I worked with, whose lives were in crisis, whether it was that the test results came back, it was bad, it was cancer, went bankrupt, someone that they loved died, an unexpected divorce. The crisis was the exception and not the rule. Towards the end of the 1990s and the beginning of the 2000s, I began to see something change in America. And I began to see how many people that I worked with in crisis, the crisis was the rule and not the exception. The problem wasn't just that they had cancer, it's that they didn't have health care. The problem wasn't just that they didn't have a job, it's that they couldn't feed their family on just one job. I had been very active in nonprofits, had raised millions of dollars, had founded nonprofits, and I began to realize that no amount of private charity could compensate for a basic lack of social justice. And I realized that something had gone very wrong in the United States, and that many of these people's problems were due, at least indirectly, to bad public policy. And that's when I became
politically interested in cognitive.
No, I grew up in a home where politics, my politics are not that different than the family I grew up in. But in terms of my own involvement, I began to realize that a kind of political class had developed that was not trustworthy in the way that they need to be, because both parties being so dominated by moneyed interests and so forth.
All right, I think you're supposed to ask me a question.
Okay, so my question is, earlier in the show, we saw Steve Bannon say that he expects Donald Trump to be elected in 2028. Now, as you know, an amendment to the Constitution established that a president can only serve 2 terms. Do you have a problem, number one, do you have a problem with the fact that Bannon said that? Do you think it's responsible for a public figure to be saying today, I endorse the president for 2028, and does that make you a little nervous?
It doesn't really make me nervous, because the Constitution is pretty clear in this regard. He cannot serve a 3rd term. I have no doubt that he will be prevented from serving a 3rd term by the Supreme Court. It's pretty ironclad. It's written down, right? And there's no way you're going to have a constitutional amendment between now and then to change that. So I think the danger of him serving a 3rd term is 0. So do I have a problem with Steve Bannon saying it? I don't. It's like saying, I hope Donald Trump rides a dragon through King's Landing or something. Okay. It's just not possible. So I don't.
Good answer. Thank
J.D.
you.
Vance is going to be Trump's successor, which is going to be a little comfort to you. But
no, I would not like to see J.D. Vance be his successor. But hey, it's America. People will decide.
People will decide.
As long as it's not Donald Trump, given that would be a 3rd term.
All right, something more fun. What do you like to do for fun, Marianne?
What do I like to do for fun?
Yeah.
I think what I like to do for fun is the main stuff that people like to do. I like to be with people I love. I like to do the normal things, whether it has to do with reading books, going to movies, being outside.
We did hang out a little bit. I came over. We had a nice chat.
Yeah, we did.
That was
We
fun.
did. Being with friends such as that.
Yeah.
That to me is fun. I'm kind of at an age and a point in my life where a lot of the things that, if I could do this, do that, I'm old enough that there's a lot of been there, done that. So that deeper relationships are to me the greatest joy.
You travel a fair amount.
Yes, and I'm going to England because my daughter is about to have her 2nd little girl.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah.
How nice.
Being a grandmother, that's a joy.
Now, do you have anything else for me, I guess?
Yeah. Given your libertarian conservatism, If we had everything that you wish for politically, what would America look like in 50 years, 75 years? And truly, and I mean this very sincerely, what about the least advantaged among us? What would happen to them?
If my views are correct, which I guess they could be wrong, but I think they're correct, we would have a much smaller government. We would have much, much, much more robust economic growth, and that robust economic growth would result in the worst off among us living much better lives, having greater, better access to affordable housing, education, healthcare, food, consumer electronics, because I know and have seen that over the course of the last 150 years, the only thing, or the main thing, maybe not the only thing, but the thing that has most massively improved people's welfare, their well-being, has reduced poverty, has made people wealthier and happier, and then have more political rights. The only thing to massively improve all that is the introduction of free trade and free market capitalism
So let me
to
ask you,
places in the world that didn't have it.
and I appreciate, even though I disagree with most everything you just said, I appreciate your sincerity, and I do mean that, and I acknowledge you. I have a question for you, though. If the marketplace takes care of everything, you were just talking about housing, for instance, what would be the economic incentive for low-cost housing? I mean, what would be the economic incentive if only the free market is handling all of this? And you have people who have no money. What's the incentive to serve people who have no money?
The incentive, well, you can say that about anything, but they do make, I mean...
You do not see unfettered capitalism as a problem at all?
It tends to bring down the prices of things, right? That when there's more competition, then they say, your house, this house costs, I don't know, $1 million, and then someone says, well, I can offer a house for $900,000, and I mean, that's how it works.
But that's not the form of capitalism.
Or food, or
but that's not the strain of capitalism. That today we have crony capitalism, we have an unfettered capitalism, we have capitalism that has strayed from its moral center. So without guardrails, I don't understand how we keep from having an economic system that would serve the rich at the expense
I
of
would
the poor,
say
which is happening right now.
Unfettering it is what makes it more of a moves it away from crony capitalism. That crony capitalism results when you install guardrails that end up benefiting one firm more than other. Again, we've talked about housing a lot today. To go back to that, you don't have a free market in housing when there are artificial government restrictions saying you can only build this kind of home here, or you can only build a building this high here, or you can only do it. That makes
the problem we have
the
in
market
housing is companies like BlackRock that own entire sections of housing and do not let anyone else live there.
That's just not
no,
I know that's a very popular lefty idea. But
yeah, well, it's because it's a fact, but I mean, it's a fact.
We can't build in this city. You can only build a building that's 13 stories high.
You
don't see how that increases the price?
You're talking about certain regulations that I think most people
I am always talking about certain regulations.
But there's more going on than building regulations. There are safety regulations. There are environmental regulations. There are regulations which make sense so that we can have clean water. Regulations make sense. I mean, that's really my question to you. The water, if we had everything that you're saying, no one would be making sure that the water was clean, that the air was clean, that the food was safe. Mm-hmm. The government's job should to be broker, that you broker individual liberty, which includes financial liberty and economic liberty, but with a concern for the common good. With what you're describing, no one would be taking care to make sure that the water was safe, the air was safe, the food was safe, the equipment was safe, the houses were safe. You use as examples.
I mean, again, all I can do is point to 100 years of giving people of increasing people's economic liberty, increasing the introducing free market reforms, and having crippling poverty be ended everywhere it's introduced.
Well, poverty.
So here's poverty over time given market introductions.
Well,
no one has another theory. What's the competing theory?
Why there's a capitalism with common sense regulations? That there are more stakeholders than just stockholders. Yeah. A worker is a stakeholder. The community is a stakeholder. The environment is a stakeholder. And we have created an economic system where stockholders, the increase of stockholder value is celebrated and advocated for by our own government at the expense of other stakeholders.
Should I just sit back and marvel that for most of human history, for most of the existence of our species, people lived in squalor, died in misery, usually violently or of disease, and life was nasty, brutish, and short, and it was virtually unchanged with a slight increase in living standards during like antiquity, and then another slight increase in
you're saying
standards during the
capitalism
Middle
fixed
Ages,
everything.
and then a massive, historically unparalleled increase in living standards in the last 80 years.
So I'm not saying that properly
Yeah.
guardrailed capitalism has not done some good. I'm not. Listen,
now
I'm
we're
not free
negotiating
market.
on my terms.
I understand the upside of free market of the free market. I've sold some books, so I understand that. That's not what we're talking about. But I'd like more people to have an opportunity to get in. What you're leaving out is how many incredible laws have been passed that protected people's safety, that established medical research and medical care. How much of the good that has occurred has been because of governmental action. It's a both and, Robby. It's a both and. I mean, there was a time in this country that black people couldn't even participate in the economy in the American South and elsewhere. There were laws that were established.
There were government restrictions.
No, there was government. But that was those were the laws of the South
under my
that were
system,
overturned
but under
by
my
people
system,
of
you
conscience.
could never have those laws in the first place because you can't put restrictions on people like that.
Well, if you have
Under my system, you cannot do that. You could not stop. A government could not tell
the drugstore that you can't.
that it can't serve or hire black people. It can't do that because under my system, it's private property and government doesn't get to tell people that kind of thing. So that's the benefit of my system. That does it for us today on Rising. Please send your questions and we will answer them. It can be political questions. It can be fun questions. It can be whatever you want.
And those of you who like Robby, you can like Robby without saying mean, horrible things about me. Would you tell
Marianne's
your
been
people,
reading the comments.
Would you tell your people to just be more polite and
Nice to
kind?
Marianne. Please
You
be
know,
nice to Marianne, yes. She's a human being, and I like her. But we don't agree, and we're having fun arguing about it. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any of our content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, now available anywhere you can find podcasts. See you tomorrow. Actually, I'll be off tomorrow. It'll be somebody else. They'll see you tomorrow.